This is Funder. When you subscribe, you turn knowledge into money. New Zealand loves a good small business story. The garage start, the early wins, the sense that staying lean is a virtue. But somewhere along the way, something happens. Growth slows, ambition narrows, and businesses that should have scaled settle. They don't fail, they don't collapse, they just stop. And the most dangerous part is this: they don't realize it's happening. Jeremy Pak is the managing director of Velocity Capital New Zealand. He works with business owners selling, buying, and scaling companies in the $5 to $100 million range. And he sees the same patterns repeat. What holds businesses back, what buyers punish, and what other countries do differently. Jeremy, how would you describe the current M&A environment in New Zealand? Buyers, sellers, valuations, and demand.
Thanks for the intro, Andrew. Really nice to chat today. Look, the market has changed a lot over the last few years, with risk-free rate coming down and bank lending tightening up, with OCR changing over the last 6 months plus. Availability of lending is a lot better than it was, which has opened up some interesting opportunities. There's still a lot of hurt out there for a lot of businesses who've perhaps down 10, 20, 50% on revenue. And a lot of them are just hanging on, trying to get through 2025 and looking to 2026. So the OCR cuts are a welcome relief to a lot of those businesses. 2026 will be a very different year. One of my friends has affectionately called it mixed 26, which is, I think, a really good way of describing it. Deal volumes have definitely picked up over the last 3-4 months. All the big four firms tend to be busy again, both on sell side and debt advisory work. There's a lot more momentum in the market than there was, say, 6 to 12 months ago. So things are changing for the better. I think what will happen over the next 1 to 2 years is we're going to see a much more aggressive sell down from a lot of the affectionately called baby boomers who are looking to retire. Still the same reasons for sale, looking to sell for retirement or health or change of circumstances, those broad three categories. And with the prospect of Labor introducing capital gains tax, I think that momentum will definitely pick up. For buyers, I think they're being still very, very cautious around due diligence and doing a lot more due diligence on businesses. And depending on what part of the market you have that opportunity, and in other parts of the market, say business broking, you don't really have that level of opportunity. So it's a bit of a mixed bag and a mixed 2026.
And are there practices from overseas that New Zealand business owners should adopt?
Oh, absolutely. So interestingly, in the US, there's a group, if you will, a specialism called exit advisory. And that's really the domain of lawyers, more lawyers than other kinds of subject matter experts in terms of accountants and so on. So exit advisory is more around if you've got the right structures in place, so making sure you've got the trust set up to appropriately deal with your tax affairs, sale of proceeds and so on, getting those wealth creation and wealth preservation structures in place, and making sure that if there is a business interruption, like the working owner dies or is permanently ill or permanently disabled, that there's enduring powers of attorney for the business, and you've got an advisory board that can perhaps step in to manage the business in the interim until you can find a replacement for that working owner. It's those kinds of things that exit advisory is doing really well, particularly in the US, and it's going across different territories. And I think eventually it will make its way to the Australian and New Zealand market for sure.
What lessons have you learned about abroad that you wish more New Zealand business owners would adopt and understand?
Great question. I think one of the challenges is productivity. New Zealand's been struggling with productivity for a long time, and there are expert consultancies out there, and I can name a few that are experts in their subject matter domain, be it supply chain or manufacturing, like Argon and Co., others in digital transformation and so on, where they can really help businesses do that step change and quite disruptive change to change the trajectory of the business. What I see is a lot of business owners, particularly in their 60s and 70s, who don't necessarily want to make that change. And the reason for that is motivation. When you've got a cash cow that's spitting out cash every year, why change things? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And a lot of people, understandably, particularly the team working in that business, can get frustrated over time and can ultimately go and buy a business. And they see the opportunity to make change either in the industry or different industries, and they want to be the owner of their destiny. And so they go out and make the changes that are needed to transform the business. Whereas a lot of owners don't want to make those kind of disruptive changes.
And what does strategic acquisitions do for organic growth? Is it a positive or negative thing in your experience where business owner says, look, my business is not big enough. If I sell it, I'm not going to make enough. I'm going to buy out my competitor or a sister company. Do you see the net benefit years later being positive, or usually it doesn't work out?
Yeah, interesting question. I think you need to talk about organic growth as being the base business and inorganic growth as being those strategic acquisitions. And when you're looking at strategic acquisitions, understanding the investment thesis, what's the rationale? And stress testing that through those preliminary discussions, through the due diligence process, to make sure that long term it is actually going to create value. So there's a lot of ways of creating value through acquisitions. The most overlooked one that I always see is cultural fit. So I can point to a really good example. It's a publicly disclosed transaction that I can talk to. So we acted for North Power to acquire Line Power in Taranaki. And through those early conversations with Line Power, it was, what's important to you? What do you think is going to be important to the staff? And it was the cultural fit and alignment. And North Power really embodied that in their initial disclosure of, hey, here's who we are, here's what we're about, here's our values, to really front foot that value alignment and cultural fit conversation. So that was subsequently concluded after about 9 months, and a really good example of that cultural alignment piece. Can point to plenty of other less successful examples. From my personal experience, I was working at a business called Coty, which was the direct competitor to L'Oreal. And the Coty business was a merger between the legacy Coty business and the Procter & Gamble beauty business. So 4.5 billion revenues combined together. And there was just foundationally a mismatch in terms of culture. And that really played out in terms of just terminology for talking about business and what was going on in the business and how to explain things, even certain terminology. So not particularly value creative as time has shown.
So how can business owners build the culture and the systems that enable long-term growth?
Great question. So culture's built over time, and you're the owner of your own destiny there. It needs to be set from the top down if you're the business owner. Investing in culture is relatively inexpensive. Reward, recognition, making sure that everyone shares the same values, that we're all on the same journey together. So communicating what the strategy is, and making sure that when you bring people onto the business, that they have that employee experience in terms of onboarding and induction, so that they feel alignment. There are consultancies out there that focus almost exclusively on culture, and for a good reason, because people get benefit out of it. The challenge is a lot of business owners see cost without equating it with value, and that bears out in consultancies, business coaches, a broad range of external parties that might come into a business. And there's relatively inexpensive ways of just trialing and testing that. Cultural activities for just a work day, quarterly work day, where they can come in and try something new, like Lego play, for example. Yeah.
If you want opinions, there are thousands of channels. If you want understanding, this is one of the few. On Fundit, we don't chase noise, we track what money is actually doing. Subscribe and stop being surprised by the market. Most people consume finance like entertainment. They watch, they forget, they repeat the same mistakes. Fundit is for people who want an edge, not a distraction. If that's you, subscribe. If it isn't, this channel will make you uncomfortable anyway. What do you think is going to be the catalyst to get us out of this productivity slump? New Zealand seems to be a little bit flat. It has been flat for a while.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So I think without harping on about AI is going to help with a lot of low value add repetitive tasks, and people run the risk of really over engineering and trying to create a whole lot of stuff with AI, and people see through it quite quickly. But where appropriately applied, AI or even robotic process automation can lift people out of the mundane, the drudgery, and elevate them to focus on higher value add work. So you need to have a critical mass in the business to achieve that. So can you do it with 5 staff? Yeah, you can. Will you get more value out of it if you have 20 staff? Absolutely. It's that scaling effect that AI really helps with. So when the burden of mundane, repetitive work is there, AI can help with that. I think the business environment's going to improve a lot over the next year because with OCR down, consumer spending should be up, and we'll certainly have a good idea of that in the first week of January once all the credit card companies come out with their December spend on Christmas Day, Boxing Day, and so on. Unfortunately, the immigration and construction are closely aligned, and I think we'll see construction come back to life early next year. But it is really being driven by immigration, and there's a lot of precedents for that in terms of correlation between the two. So I think people should really focus on productivity and getting the most out of their staff and really asking, do I really need this? Is this adding value? Or flipping the conversation, flipping the script and saying, where do you think, asking the staff member, where do you think you can create more value in the business? So allowing them to perhaps slightly rewrite or work on other areas that are outside of their existing job spec and job role.
Jeremy Pak, Velocity Capital, appreciate your insights today, and we'll talk again soon.
Great. Thanks, Andrew.
The market doesn't reward effort, it rewards clarity. We bring you the thinking behind the moves, not after the headlines, before them. Subscribe to Fundit and start seeing what others miss.